play me.
Have you ever walked into a house and felt like it was watching you? Not in a supernatural way at first, not ghosts, not shadows, just a quiet, sinking feeling that you don't belong there. And something else does dot when Mark and I moved into this house. We thought it was our second chance. A new beginning after everything we lost. But the walls already knew our names. They whispered things we'd never said out loud. And sometimes they showed us things that hadn't happened yet. I used to think houses were just wood and stone. Now I know they can remember. They can listen. They can wait. And the worst part isn't that the house was haunted. It's that it remembered every terrible thing we'd ever done. And it wanted us to do them again, Dot. So if you're listening right now, turn down the lights. Close your eyes. And imagine moving into a home that knows your secrets, because that's where this story begins. Asterisk, when Mark and I first saw the house, it felt like a promise. It stood at the end of a narrow, tree-lined road, surrounded by mist that never seemed to lift. The listing called it a historic home with character. The agent said it was built in the 1920s, recently renovated, though the paint on the porch still peeled in long curls like old skin. Mark loved it immediately. He said the air smelled like a new beginning. I didn't tell him it smelled like damp wood and something faintly sweet, like rotting flowers. We'd been through so much already, and I wanted to believe that walls and a roof could fix what was broken between us. We'd lost our daughter 8 months earlier. A freak accident. The kind of story neighbors whisper about but never ask you to explain. Since then, Mark and I barely spoke. He threw himself into work, and I drifted through rooms that felt too quiet. The house seemed like the only thing left we could rebuild together. The first night, we slept on a mattress on the floor, surrounded by boxes. The rain tapped against the windows, and I remember thinking how alive the sound was. Rhythmic, steady, almost like breathing. When I woke later, the rain had stopped, but the breathing hadn't. It came from the wall behind me, slow and deep, as if the house itself was asleep beside us. I told myself it was the plumbing or wind caught in the chimney. But the next morning, when I walked downstairs, every box had been moved. Not opened, just rearranged, like someone had tried to make the living room look better. Mark laughed when I mentioned it. "You're just tired," he said. "You're hearing things again?" The way he said again made my stomach twist. He didn't mean to be cruel, but ever since the accident, he treated me like glass. And maybe that's why I didn't argue. I wanted him to believe I was okay. The following week, small things kept changing. The hallway clock reset itself every night to 2:13 a.m. The upstairs door swelled shut, though it had been fine before. Sometimes when I passed the old mirror in the foyer, I'd see movement, like someone had just stepped out of frame. Still, there were moments that felt peaceful. The sunlight through the kitchen windows in the morning, the sound of Mark humming while unpacking tools in the shed. For the first time in months, he smiled at me without forcing it. I told myself that maybe the house really was healing us. Then, on the 10th night, I heard a child crying. It was faint, distant, a small, broken sound coming from the attic. I froze on the staircase, my heart thudding against my ribs. Mark was asleep beside me, so I followed the sound alone, one careful step at a time. The attic door was locked, but the crying stopped the moment I touched the knob. When I went back downstairs, the air smelled like burnt sugar and smoke. The next morning, I asked Mark if he'd ever been in the attic. He frowned. "What attic?" He said. I thought he was joking, but when I showed him the ceiling hatch in the hallway, his face went pale. "That wasn't there yesterday," he whispered, That's when the house began to remember out loud. Asterisk when Mark and I first saw the house. It felt like a promise, a fresh start, a quiet place where we could finally breathe again. The real estate agent called it a charming, century-old home with history and heart. I should have known history always comes with ghosts. It stood at the end of a forgotten road, wrapped in a tangle of oak trees. The paint peeled like old skin, the windows clouded with dust. But Mark loved it. He said it felt alive. He wasn't wrong. We'd been searching for something to fix us. Anything to fill the silence that followed our daughter Lily's death. 8 months of grief had hollowed us out. We moved through days like strangers sharing the same body of sorrow. The house was supposed to be a new beginning. Asterisk, we slept on the floor, surrounded by boxes and the scent of rain-soaked wood. I woke up at 3:07 a.m. to a sound, slow, rhythmic, deliberate, breathing, not ours. It came from the wall behind my head. I lay still, counting each inhale, each exhale, until the sun rose. In the morning, Mark said I'd been dreaming. But when we went downstairs, every box we'd left in the living room had been moved, perfectly aligned along the walls, leaving the center of the room empty like a stage. He laughed it off. Settling noises, he said. Old houses do that, but I knew better. Old houses don't organize your furniture while you sleep. Asterisk, there was a mirror in the foyer, tall, oval, framed in tarnished gold. It came with the house. The agent said it was original. I hated it instantly. Every time I passed, I saw something just slightly wrong. The reflection would lag behind or blink when I didn't. Once, I saw a figure standing behind me, small, still, watching. When I turned around, the hallway was empty. Mark started spending more time outside, fixing things, mowing, avoiding me. I think he was afraid of what I was becoming. Or maybe afraid that I was seeing what he refused to. Asterisk, on the 10th night, I heard a child crying. It was faint, coming from the attic. Mark was asleep beside me, breathing evenly. I didn't wake him. I just climbed the stairs, slowly, barefoot, following the sound. The attic door was locked. But the crying stopped the second I touched the knob. That morning, when I asked Mark if he'd ever opened the attic, he frowned. What attic? He asked when I showed him the hatch in the hallway ceiling. He froze. I swear to God, that wasn't there before, he whispered. That's when I started to realize something. The house wasn't changing. It was revealing. Asterisk, I opened the attic door that night. The air was thick, dry, and smelled like burnt sugar and dust. Inside, the room was filled with furniture, but not ours. Tiny chairs, a wooden cradle, a child's rocking horse. On the far wall, there was a mural, painted in faded colors. A woman, a man, and a little girl, but the little girl's face, it was smeared out. Beneath the mural, someone had carved a line into the wood. She's still here. I ran downstairs, shaking. Mark grabbed my arms and said, Emily, you need to stop this. You're scaring yourself. But when I told him what I saw, he went pale, because he'd seen it too. The mural and the missing face. Asterisk, a few days later, while unpacking the basement, Mark found an old box of VHS tapes, each one labeled with dates from the 1980s. One was marked, Family Sessions to 1987. We watched it together. A family appeared on screen, a mother, father, and daughter, around 7 years old. They were sitting in the same living room where we were sitting. Same wallpaper, same curtains. The father spoke to the camera. Day 21. The house remembers everything we say now. Then the little girl began to hum, a tune that sent ice through my veins because it was Lily's lullaby, the one I used to sing every night before the accident. Mark turned off the TV. Neither of us spoke. We didn't watch another tape. But the next morning, the TV turned on by itself, static, then a whisper through the speakers. Finish the story. Asterisk, from that night on, the house spoke to us. Not with words, but with memories. When I washed dishes, I saw flashes of another woman's hands doing the same, her skin blistered, nails dirty. When Mark shaved, he saw a man's reflection over his shoulder. And sometimes, late at night, we'd hear a child's laughter drifting through the vents. One morning, we found footprints, small, bare, wet, leading from the attic to our bed. Mark decided we needed to leave. But when we packed the car, the engine wouldn't start, the doors wouldn't open, and the house locked itself. Asterisk, that night, the walls bled. Dark stains spreading like veins. We ran to the attic. I don't know why. Maybe because every nightmare leads back to its beginning. The mural was glowing. And beneath it, a small wooden box we hadn't noticed before. Inside was a child's dress, torn, burned, and a photograph. The same family from the tapes. But this time, the little girl's face wasn't missing. It was Lily's. I screamed. Mark fell to his knees. It can't be her, he kept saying. But the truth hit me like a wave. The night Lily died, it wasn't an accident. He had been drinking. He'd swerved the car. I'd buried my grief so deep I'd forgotten. But the house remembered. It wanted us to see. Asterisk, Mark tried to destroy the box. The moment he touched it, the floorboard split. Hands, dozens of them, reached out, pulling him down. He screamed my name until his voice disappeared. Now, it's just me, alone in the house that remembers. Every night, I hear Lily's lullaby through the walls. Then sometimes I see her reflection, small hands pressed against the mirror, smiling like she's finally home. The police never found Mark's body. The house won't let me leave, but maybe I don't want to. Maybe it's where I belong now, with my daughter, in a place that never forgets. If you ever pass by a house that hums when the rain falls, don't stop. Don't look inside, because some homes don't want new owners. They just want their family back. Asterisk, tell me, if you heard your lost child calling your name, would you walk away? Or would you go home just one last time? If this story made your skin crawl, hit like, drop your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe, because next week, I'll tell you about the hospital that dreams when no one's inside. Asterisk, when I first started sharing these stories, I thought they were just tales, fragments of fear, pieces of imagination. But lately, something strange has been happening. Every time I finish telling one, I feel watched. Like the story doesn't end when the words do, it lingers. Maybe that's what stories really are. Not memories, but echoes. They stay behind, whispering, waiting for someone else to listen. So if you're still here, still listening, then I need you to be careful. Because the next one, it isn't just a story someone told me. It's something I found. Something that was never meant to be heard. Asterisk, before you listen to this one, I want you to do something for me. Don't multitask. Don't scroll. Just stop for a moment. Take a deep breath. Listen to the sound around you, the faint hum of your room, maybe a car passing outside. Now imagine that beneath that sound, something else is playing, something you didn't record, something that's been there all along, because this is the story of the house that recorded itself, and how I learned that some walls don't just remember, they replay. When I moved into the old duplex on Birch Avenue, I thought I'd found the perfect place. It was small, quiet, and cheap. Too cheap, honestly. But after everything that happened in the last house, I needed something simple. A fresh start. Mark and I had separated by then. He'd gone back to the city. I stayed behind. I told myself I liked the silence. The first few nights were calm, almost peaceful. I worked during the day and came home to the faint smell of dust and old wood. The walls were thick, the kind that swallowed sound. No neighbors on one side. The adjoining unit was vacant. Then one night, while I was unpacking boxes, I heard something faint, a muffled voice. It came from behind the wall near the kitchen. At first, I thought it was a radio. Maybe someone had left one in the attic. But the voice was too close, too specific. It was a man, whispering, repeating the same phrase over and over. "Don't turn it off." I pressed my ear against the plaster, but the sound stopped. The next night, it started again. Only this time, it wasn't a man. It was a woman, crying softly, whispering please. I barely slept out by morning. I convinced myself it had to be something rational. Old wiring, trapped air, something explainable. But when the electrician came, he shook his head. "There's nothing behind that wall, ma'am. No cables, no vents. Solid insulation." That night, the sound came again, louder. And this time, I realized it wasn't random. It was a recording. I could hear the static, the faint hiss of an old cassette player. Then the same words, again and again. "Don't turn it off. Don't turn it off. Don't," I finally shouted. "What do you want?" And the wall went silent. 2 days later, I woke to find something new. A hairline crack running down the kitchen wall, right where I'd been hearing the voices. When I touched it, the plaster felt soft. Underneath, I could hear a faint ticking like film spinning through a reel. That's when I called the landlord. He sighed. "That property's old. You're not the first tenant to complain about sounds. But there's nothing in the records about tapes or..." He paused, then said, "Wait, you're in Unit B, right?" I said yes. He exhaled sharply. "I'll send someone tomorrow." But no one came. Instead, that night, I found a small panel loose in the basement. Behind it was a hollow space, and inside, a dusty shoebox filled with old cassette tapes. Each one was labeled in shaky handwriting. Kitchen, bedroom, basement, unit adopt. My hands trembled as I picked one up. Kitchen, 1974. I found an old tape deck in a box of forgotten tools and pressed play. At first, just static. Then a woman's voice, calm, gentle, but strained. She was describing her day, the sound of water running. Then a man's voice, colder, almost detached. "You're not leaving." The woman gasped, begged him to stop. Then the tape cut off. I checked the next one. Bedroom, 1974. More static. Then a scream. The rest of the tapes were the same. Moments of everyday life followed by something darker. Arguments, cries, heavy footsteps, slamming doors. And always, at the very end, the same faint whisper, "Don't turn it off." I barely made it through the night. Every time I closed my eyes, I swore I could hear the click of a recorder starting somewhere in the house. The next morning, I went next door to the supposedly empty unit. The door was locked, but through the dusty window, I could see shadows. A table, 2 chairs, and on the table, a tape recorder. I should have left, but I didn't. I found the spare key the landlord had left inside my cabinet, slipped it into the lock, and pushed the door open. The smell hit me first, mold, rust, and something sour underneath. The air felt thick, almost wet. On the walls, I saw faint outlines, circular indents, like something had once been nailed there and then removed. The table in the center was covered in dust, except for one thing, a tape labeled "Final Session." My fingers shook as I pressed play. A man's voice, calm, methodical, spoke first. "Session 32. Patient shows regression, refuses to stop recording." Then a woman's trembling voice, "Please don't make me do this again." There was a long pause. Then the sound of footsteps and the man whispering, closer now, right against the microphone, "You can't stop what's already been recorded." The tape ended with a faint click, and then something clicked behind me. The recorder turned itself back on, only this time I could hear my own breathing. I dropped everything and ran. The moment I crossed the threshold back into my unit, all the lights flickered. The hum from the walls rose into a low, vibrating growl. And then, beneath that noise, I heard it again, my voice. From inside the wall dot, it was a playback of my own words from earlier that night. Don't turn it off. I don't remember much after that. Just the sound of tape unraveling like 1,000 whispers unspooling at once. The landlord found me the next morning in the driveway, shaking, covered in dust. He said there was no Unit A anymore, that it had been sealed up since 1975. A murder-suicide, he said. A husband who recorded every moment of his wife's last days. They removed the tapes, but the walls, they kept the sound. The house never stopped replaying it. It's been months since I left Birch Avenue. I've tried to move on, to forget, but sometimes at night, when the world is quiet, I hear faint static again. And if I listen long enough, I can hear myself saying those same words over and over. Don't turn it off. Asterisk, if you've ever heard a sound you couldn't explain, a whisper through the static, a recording that shouldn't exist, tell me in the comments what you think it was. Because maybe some sounds aren't echoes of the past. Maybe they're invitations. This was the red flag report. Where silence doesn't mean peace, it means something is listening.